The king's convoy in action. It leaves more or less every day when he's in the regions and covers about 30,000 miles a year. In spite of losing one eye after his motor accident as a young man, the king likes to drive himself, very fast. He says that it helps him to feel the land, to sense intuitively what it needs. He plans the trips himself and decides when to stop. Once people know that the king is going to pass their way, they lay out carpets in case he might stop. For the feet of a king are not supposed to touch the ground. This taboo, though no longer strictly held, is still exercised, particularly by the country people. The purpose of these tours is always twofold. On the one hand is the improvement in the people's welfare and the development which the king achieves, and this is certainly significant. On the other hand, there is his presence as king among the villagers. Before his visit, they may feel themselves neglected. In his presence, and after he has gone, they know that they are not. In 1 year, the king's convoy gave away to the rural poor 39,038 blankets, 30,778 towels, 31,010 monks' robes, 29,180 sweaters, 29,140 farmers' outfits, 20,340 children's outfits, 34,358 pupils' uniforms. One statistic the palace would not release was the number of lollipops given out, but it must be hundreds of thousands per year. The ladies-in-waiting act as social workers, taking extensive notes on every case so that each one can be followed up afterwards. This means typing up every night, and a lot of work when the court is returned to Bangkok. The King's Chief Information Officer coordinates them. There are a great number of administrative points to consider. For instance, if they take a child from a place like this to hospital in Bangkok, they have to take its family as well and feed and house them. No previous king had ever even visited the northeast. King Bhumibol spent the first 10 years of his reign traveling very thoroughly through every district of the country so that he could see the problems in detail at first hand. This detailed knowledge now forms a base for rapidly expanding work in all kinds of development. Always the encouragement, listening to their problems, helping them to help themselves.
Did they have any particular problem they wanted you to?
No problem. They were very happy. And I asked in what temple they were going, and they said the name, and I looked in the map. And there is a old temple here, and they did not remember the name.
They seem to be very impressed with your geographical knowledge.
Oh, because they are very happy when somebody comes and knows about their village.
But you go everywhere with this map, I notice. It never, not this particular one, but
yes,
there is never a map from your hand.
I try to have a map so that I know where I'm going. And they are happy when they know that the official map is, the village is on their map.
Are there some occasions when people live in villages that aren't marked on your map or that have the wrong name?
Well, that is what happened now.
What is what happened?
There's a village that has no name, and I put a name on it.
What's the royal household able to do for the people on visits like this?
If they are seriously ill, we take them to Bangkok and we give give them the operation or the medicine they need, and they don't have to pay anything. We pay for all the operation and the medicine, and they follow them up until they are well, and we send them home. We give them the money to go home and look after their family also. After, when their mother or father is in hospital, we look after the children also.
Who actually pays for all this help? Is every single bit of help paid for by the royal family?
Yes. Yes.
What about the medical teams who come? Surely they're paid by the government. Some of the doctors who are coming around with you.
They are volunteer doctors, but the medicine, the royal family pays for the medicine.
Why haven't these people, if they've got something the matter with them, why haven't they gone to the ordinary government medical health service or to the local government hospitals and tried to get help from them?
There are very few government hospitals around here, and sometimes it's a sensitive area. The government officers couldn't get in.
The King's mother, Her Royal Highness the Princess Mother, founded her flying doctor service precisely to cover these gaps in government health care. Her eldest daughter, Princess Galyani, who works as a university lecturer, helps her mother at weekends. As a trained nurse, the Princess Mother is well qualified for this work. Now nearly 80, she remains remarkably fit and continues to work with great energy at a number of projects, but her influence in matters of health has been considerable. Neither she nor her son, King Bhumibol, ever forgets that public health was the life work of his father, Prince Mahidol, who died whilst working as a doctor in the north of Thailand. The Flying Doctor Service was founded in 1969. Border Patrol police helicopters take the doctors into remote rural areas they would not otherwise be able to reach. Radio communication has helped to make the service available throughout the country. There are now more than 20,000 in the service: doctors, dentists, nurses, pharmacists, and health officers. All are volunteers who work for nothing in their holidays or spare time, and they are desperately needed, for there is a great lack of trained doctors in the rural areas. The opening of a new hospital is a more conventional act of royalty. Every state ceremony is prefaced by a religious one. Even in such conventional engagements as these, the King's workload is enormous. 826 official engagements last year. In other words, an average of between 2 and 3 engagements a day, 7 days a week throughout the year. Both King and Queen admit that they have very little time in which to talk to each other in private. Outside the hospital, the crowds wait as usual for a chance to see the royal family. The King will never allow a precise time schedule to be imposed on his day, because he needs to be free to stop and talk with people as they present themselves.
She has 8 children, and 5 of them are still alive, and she can walk, and she can see very well. She can do her homework, but she's a little bit deaf. This is her grandchild, grandniece, and her youngest daughter is more than 40. 8 children. she's a little bit shy of the camera, so I tell her to smile. These people, the young girls behind them said they are really over 100 years old. They said that they eat ordinary, but they complain about being so poor and nobody looked after them. So I think we'll just help the neighbors to give some money to the neighbors to look after them. This one is totally alone. That's what she told me. Totally alone. But these two have distant relatives looking after her.
So far this year, volunteer doctors on the royal team have performed about 250 operations in this area, mostly for eye complaints. Many doctors in the northeast have been killed by communists ransacking hospitals for medical supplies.
มีเพดานไหมจ๊ะเพดานบุ๋มไหม
เดี๋ยวไปแค่แขนหน่อยโหนิดเดียวไปค่ะสุดไม่มากแค่ใส่หน้าก็จะหนาจริงๆนิดเดียว
เขาทำได้จ๊ะเย็บได้เย็บแล้วเขาโตขึ้นเขาจะสบายใจกว่านะ
Your Majesty, could you tell us about the lady you looked at who had the growth?
She's 21 years old and just married 2 years ago. And she said this growth grows very quickly. In 2 years' time, it's big like you saw it. And the doctor said it's cancer. I don't know, what do you call in English here, sinus, where the sinus is?
The sinus? The sinus.
Yes. She has cancer and it is perhaps the last stage. And we feel very sorry, but we are going to send her to Bangkok with the, what do you call radio? With
For radiation treatment.
radiation treatment.
How about the small child you looked at? I think this child who had a hair lip.
I think it can be operated here at Sakunakorn because we have so many good doctors at Sakunakorn Hospital, so it's all right.
An official reception in the grounds of Phupan Palace. At these functions, everyone must take part. Guests are frequently asked to do some kind of turn. Now it is the ladies in waiting. They worked all day as social workers. Now at night, they must change and perform traditional Thai dance. Romeo and Juliet, translated to Thai opera, with Romeo played by one of the volunteer doctors.
จะทนทุกข์ทุกทนเจ้าดวงเดือนเอ๋ย
With the king's many languages, there is rarely any need for an interpreter. There is a great tradition of hospitality among the Thais. The showing of hospitality to foreigners, like Giscard d'Estaing's brother, is considered important for its own sake. The King and Queen received representatives of friendly countries, both formally and informally, turning state functions into personal affairs whenever possible.
I saw that blue, lovely blue.
A natural part of the royal family's job is to promote the country's crafts, culture, and special products, even at parties. The Queen is very much concerned to increase silk production throughout the country. And she makes a point of wearing Thai fabrics herself.
These dresses are made of matmi silk, which is the material woven in the northeastern part of Thailand. Before it was dyeing art because it is so difficult to make it. It would take many weeks to make it. Have you noticed that a single piece of matmi can have different color? Once you look at it, it seems the color of gold, and if you turn it around, it has the reflect of mauve color. So that's the quality of Thai silk. The people in the northeastern part of Thailand is the big majority of Thai population, and that part is quite dry. There are often droughts. When I visited, I noticed that the people are wearing this, but only a sarong. It is so beautiful and so different from other material. So I asked them to weave it for me. And now I've got the market in the Japan, and soon I hope to get the market in Hong Kong.
In a sense, all official functions are, as it were, extras to the king's main job, his travelling development column. The convoy contains doctors, social workers, agricultural advisors, irrigation engineers, and other specialists as required. Which is more fundamental to the relief of the rural poor? Improved medical care for the sick, or better food for everyone? The two must go together. Better nutrition means better health. The king is well aware that Thailand could have enormously productive agriculture. The problem often comes down to making the best use of available water. There's either too little or too much. Wherever he goes, you will see soldiers. Especially near the border, there is always danger. A spotter plane flies overhead. This is one of the king's new dams. Irrigation is probably the aspect of development to which he contributes most. Apart from his boat with the rudderless engine, the king has designed dams and irrigation channels himself. He has initiated over 400 irrigation projects throughout Thailand, often combining them with the introduction of fisheries. The king instigates these projects, draws up detailed plans, persuades the government to finance them, but continues to take a personal interest in their construction and development. With his quick grasp of the subject, he always makes his experts work hard. And though he seems able to master almost anything he puts his hand to, it is probably the many facets of engineering for which he has the most talent. The king carries a two-way radio with him at all times. He is said even to sleep with it. This means that he's the first to hear of any crisis. But he seems oblivious to everything as he concentrates on the job in hand.
And helped by this water here. So this water we take here, and we must put a small dam here so that they'll have water here. The most important thing is that they should have rice in this area, which doesn't have to be marketed. They eat it. It is their subsistence. They will be able to have self-sufficiency in rice here, which they don't have now because last year, 2 years before, it was dry, no water.
What do you think the communist insurgents are telling people about schemes like this that you're involved in?
Depends on the one. Sometimes they will say that they are the initiators of this scheme. Sometimes they will say that this scheme is the devil's scheme. Depends on the man.
But in a sense, there's a bit of truth in that, because they might be claiming that were it not for all their action, you and the government
You
wouldn't
like
be
to
doing
ask-
these things here.
You like to pose this question. This is a half-truth. If they were not there, we would not have trouble. And we would have built this dam a long time ago. But if, because they are there, we must take the trouble to come here. Because the people who built this, they want to have some encouragement.
You're saying that this is evidence that you're winning,
Winning against what?
communist insurgency.
Oh, I don't know. But we are winning against hunger. This is what we are doing. We are not fighting against people. We are fighting against hunger. We want to have them have a better life. If we make this and they have a better life, the people you call communist insurgent will have a better life also. So everybody is happy.
And so on into the night. Impossible not to be overwhelmed by the energy of this man who works round the clock for his people. What must he think of us, technology-cosseted Westerners? The Queen told us that we could never capture his life on film because we, with our union rules, would never work the hours that he does. Such powers of concentration, such radiant energy. The rice used in the ploughing ceremony is grown here in the King's experimental rice farm, whose aim has been to improve the quality of rice seed and in other ways to develop the technology of rice farming. This rice mill the King designed himself. The King's farm is in the grounds of Kitlada Villa, his main residence in the center of Bangkok. The Grand Palace is his ceremonial headquarters. In the dairy farm, they experiment with the best kinds of grass for cattle in the tropics and with ways to improve dairy technology. The King, as always, is specially concerned with the small farmer. The means to improve Thai agriculture are available. The problem lies in persuading the peasants to change their ways. There is a further complication. While the King offers better living standards through better farming, the insurgents are also at work. Since Thammasat, they have been greatly strengthened by students who fled to the hills. The students will not overthrow the Thai government, but if the peasants are converted to communism on a large scale, it will be a different matter. One of the dangerous areas is the north, the most isolated part of the country with the most backward living standards. This is the country of the hill tribes, each village cut off from its neighbors by once thickly forested mountain ranges very difficult to cross. This is one of the villages where the King is working to safeguard the forests from destruction and to show the hill tribes that there are more profitable crops than opium.
The first thing was not the project, was just trying to do something to improve a little their situation. We gave them some pigs, some piglets, and some fodder for the piglets, and some sorghum and other things to plant so that they can buy rice and buy some other commodities. At the same time that we try to help the people to have a better living, a better cultivation, a better food, a better way of life, we can at the same time help in the fighting against the narcotics.
The hill tribes are relatively recent immigrants to Thailand, most having gradually moved south from China since the 19th century. There are now about 300,000 of them, each with their own language and customs. In some of the tribes, the women do the work. cultural differences between the various hill tribes are important to them. The separateness of each tribe and the fact that the hill tribes in general are so cut off from central Thailand creates problems for the king, who wants the country to see itself as one. The people of this village belong to the Karen tribe. The tying of protective threads round the wrists, a very special gesture of friendship from these hill people and extended to very few not of their own tribe. They call the king father.
แม่ทำยาตกไปบอกนะหลวงเดียยาตกขายเมื่อกี้ให้ยาอะไรจ๊ะทำตกไปนะคนนี้น่าถ่ายน่าถ่าย
What does the visit of the royal family to this village mean to you? What does it mean to the village?
มีครับมีความหมายแล้วก็มีประโยชน์มากเพราะว่ามีบุญด้วยกันหมู่บ้านนี้
Has great meaning and great merit for the village. They feel a blessing on the
เมื่อ
occasion.
ก่อนยังไม่เคยมีมาเลย
This is the first time that His Majesty has come, so they feel a great sense of gratitude. The old people feel that they can now pass on to the other world as a result of having seen the king and the queen before they died. The loyalty to the royal family will rise in the village.
บ้านนี้จะมีความรักต่อในหลวงมากขึ้น
Our love for them will increase, having seen them with their own eyes.
ได้เห็นด้วยตาด้วยตัวเอง
We've heard his voice with his own lips and have spoken to him with ours. They have heard of him and heard his voice over the radio, but now they have actually seen him, that he is a real live person and therefore takes on great personal meaning in their lives.
My husband and I are not content with only visiting or doing the conventional things. We must try to do something better than that. We must try to help the government to promote the welfare of the people, because we are underdeveloped country. So the task of mere visiting the people as a conventional duty of head of state is nonsense. If we cannot participate in helping alleviate the misery of the people, then we consider it a failure to be a head of state.
Always the maps, even in the lunch break. But it is not merely driving himself for the sake of driving himself. It is part of a very deliberate method of working. First, he listens to anyone who approaches him with a problem. Then he makes himself take time to think about the problem on his own. He will then propose a plan. Sometimes he will suggest a scheme to the government and leave them to implement it. Sometimes he will start an experimental project which he will initially finance himself. Increasingly, his pilot schemes are developed for general use throughout the country. There is often a lot more walking than this. Before the days of helicopters, much more walking still. Many of the villages can only be reached after walks of 3 or 4 hours. It is necessary to keep fit. The Queen can swim a mile without discomfort. All the royal family jog regularly, the King most often late at night after finishing work. Their energy is physical as well as mental. It has now been discovered But the north of Thailand can grow a vast variety of crops. Coffee is one of them, and coffee growing is developing rapidly. The king is now visiting a Meo village. The Meo are the largest in numbers of the hill tribes. There are about 50,000, which are subdivided into green Meo, black Meo, white Meo, red Meo, and striped Meo, so called from the colors of their skirts. Not all these subdivisions live in Thailand. As with other hill tribes, they're also found in Burma. The hill tribes of Burma and Thailand have far more in common with each other than either do with the countries in which they have been deemed citizens by map-drawing politicians. Up here, the king has worked very hard to encourage them to abandon their nomadic life and settle down as Thai citizens. The spotter aeroplane is always overhead in case of trouble. The problem with this country and so much of the north is not naturally poor soil, but erosion. The semi-nomadic tribes slash and burn the forests, cultivate their own patch until the soil is exhausted, and then move on to destroy more of the valuable teak forests. The erosion of the hills is causing floods in the plains. The main traditional crop of all the hill tribes is the opium poppy. The juice is extracted from the unripe fruit. Care must be taken not to slit right through, or the juice will flow inside and be lost, and also stop the seeds from ripening. Most of the opium is processed into heroin, but very little of the huge profits that the city middlemen get come back to the poor peasants who grow and smoke the opium. These people have smoked opium for centuries. They see nothing wrong with it. Indeed, it has been said that this kind of opium smoking is hardly more harmful than smoking tobacco. Furthermore, it is often used as a painkiller. The king refuses to punish the hill tribesmen as lawbreakers. Instead, he is very concerned to persuade them to grow alternative crops which can be more profitable than poppies. The king conjectured that the flowers and fruit trees of the temperate zone could be grown successfully in these upland regions of Thailand. He put experts to work, and it was discovered that he was right. Whether it be flowers such as carnations or fruit such as apples, peaches and strawberries, the produce will sell for far less in Bangkok than imports from Europe or America, and yet still earn the hill tribesmen a greater profit than they would get from opium. They even export bulbs to Holland. Schemes have also been started whereby plants are grown to a certain stage in these cooler uplands, which makes for stronger stock, and then transplanted to the plains, where they mature more rapidly in the greater heat. Such schemes, started by the king, are now backed by the United Nations as part of the war on drug production. They not only increase the hill tribes' prosperity, but also increase the opportunities for cooperation between the hill tribes and the Thais who live on the plains below them.
Isn't it true that most of the heroin, which is smuggled out of Thailand, actually comes across the border from Laos and Burma, and whatever you do with your projects, you still can't control that?
The role project can do to not to stop but to improve the situation is that so that the people here, many of them are the hill tribes, they have friends, or they have relatives all over the route from Yunnan to Tibet and down to our country here. It's a long way, and they walk. They have communication, very good communication. Apart from what you can see in the mountains, there's something you cannot see. It's the spirit of these people. They come and go, and they say that there's the King's project. They spread the information. They are better than the information service of Bangkok. If we postulate that the opium is grown outside of this country, and the heroin factories are outside of this country, only the trade comes through. Why should we go on helping these people to grow lettuces, if you want, or strawberries? Well, we have the opium or the narcotics problem is only one, as I told you at the beginning, it's only one of the aspect of the problem, or say the task we have. The other task is to give these people a better way of life. So this we continue, even if, and I don't think it is very near future, if the opium is eradicated like smallpox has been. We have to continue this program for a long time, so that we give these people a better life, and also so that everyone will get the benefit of it.
Is the king's life at great risk on these trips? A member of the royal family, Princess Wipawadi Ransit, while traveling by helicopter to a remote village, was shot down by insurgents and killed. The king's helicopter is painted in conspicuous colors. Princess Sirinthorn told us, the insurgents shoot up the village on the day before we arrive and the day after we leave, but not on the day of our visit. That's how it is at the moment, anyhow. The royal family use helicopters to visit the more isolated parts of Thailand. Frequently on such visits, they perform life-saving service by removing sick people to hospital, or in the case of a border raid such as this, lifting out the dead and wounded. The king's work among the peasants takes him closer and closer to sharp personal danger. One day, perhaps, there will be communist insurgents who would not care much about murdering a king. There is all sorts of danger anyhow. Vietnamese troops on the border, communist subversion inside the country, and refugees in their hundreds of thousands putting strain on those who have to feed them and offering ideal cover for communist infiltrators. The monarchy is the soul of the Thai nation. As the king arrives at this temple, to pay respect to an old monk, respect to his purity and peace, the noise of the spotter plane, reminder of the king's constant danger, of Thailand's constant danger, grows louder and louder.
Your Majesty, how important is Buddhism for you, the precepts of Buddhism in your daily life as king?
Buddhist thought is rather complex and has many grades. There's the grade of Buddhism in the highest level is to attain absolute purity, which you call selfish motive, and that is true. It is selfish, purely selfish. But to attain this purity, you must do everything that is not selfish, which for you perhaps is a paradox. One must sacrifice. One must discard everything that one thinks that is one's own. Charity is one way to discard.
How important is meditation as a part of this process?
Meditation is a process that is very important because first you must have concentration. You must concentrate your mind so that you have a peace that is perhaps not lasting, but a peace in which you can see many things. To have the peace, the real peace, and then with this peace you will be able to see very clearly.
Usually my husband would come in earlier than I would and meditate, really meditate, because he could control his breathing and he could really concentrate. But I cannot concentrate and meditate yet. I'm learning. I only pray. But my husband said it's all right. That is the same thing as meditating. Loving kindness is the real thing one should give to other person. To give, not to take only, to give, to love. So that's the reason my husband and I can work year after year, day after day, without being ill. But we know that when it's time to die, nobody can escape. So it's better that we contribute as much as we can to society and reserve some small limited time for us. At first, I was very much afraid of death. But later on, I met a great teacher, a monk, who told me never to be afraid of death because it's natural occurrence. If you have good intention towards the others and you have done all you can do for your country and for human beings, even if you died, your soul or spirit or mind will be in peace.